It's Tama Matheson here, Artistic Director of the 4MBS Brisbane Shakespeare Festival, and I wanted to speak to you again about Shakespeare, in particular this time about Shakespeare and the formation of modern English, because more than any other writer, Shakespeare helped to form the English that we use today. Not only did he coin many of the words that we use, or at least they appear first in his work, they're the first attestations of words which must have been extant at the time, but more importantly, he coined so many of the phrases we use today. Many of his phrases actually have become part of our ordinary conversation, just well-worn phrases in common parlance. In fact, they've become so well-worn, they've become cliches. Interesting fact about the word cliche, by the way, is that when old printing presses were at work, because the letters had to be lined up individually, if there were well-known phrases, they were printed as a single phrase, so this entire phrase could just be dumped onto the page, rather than letters being individually laid out each time. And this plate with the well-worn phrase was called a cliche. The other word for it was a stereotype. So that's where the word cliche comes from, just by the by. And Shakespeare has given us many of these cliches. And I'll just go through some of the words that he gave us that are either coined by Shakespeare or first attested to in Shakespeare. And they include certain words which must have been commonly used in the populace at the time, such as bubble, obscene, dwindle, and puppy dogs. They must have been used, otherwise they wouldn't have been understood. But the first time we see them written down is in Shakespeare. And then there are others which are words like accommodation and assassination, which are actually just transformations of words that probably already exist, like assassin and accommodate, but he was able to turn them into, a different kind of nouns, or he would, turn verbs into nouns. He loved turning verbs into nouns. I said it out Herod's Herod is the famous one. But there are other words, for instance, that come up first in Shakespeare, such as barefaced, countless, courtship, dislocate, eventful, fancy-free, lackluster, laughable, premeditated, and submerged. And there are many neologisms that didn't make it into English or have fallen by the wayside and fallen out of usage, such as abruption, appertainment, cadent, exsufflocate, which is a particularly beautiful one, persistive, protractive, questrus, soilure, tortive, ungenitured, unplausive, and vastidity. These ones have not survived. But perhaps the most important thing about Shakespeare's verbal fecundity is not his lexicography as much of his phraseology. He gave us so many of the phrases that we currently use in common parlance, and the phrases also give us thoughts. So not only did they tell us how to express certain things, they tell us how to think certain things. So he changes the way humans have, or he changed the way humans have thought over time. So when he says something like parting is such sweet sorrow, it is such a perfect encapsulation of that feeling of sadness and exaltation one gets when one parts from one's beloved or one's family, anything, that we now know how to refer to that. We know how to think that experience. So his phrases, I think, are even more important than his words for what they do for common thinking. And to illustrate this point, I like to read something which is often read, and you may have heard before, and forgive me if you have, but it's actually Bernard Levin, the great Times journalist of 30, 40 years ago, who wrote a piece called On Quoting Shakespeare, which shows how many phrases of his we currently use in common parlance. And this is only a few of them, and it's pretty exhaustive. And it goes like this. If you cannot understand my argument and declare it's Greek to me, you are quoting Shakespeare. If you claim to be more sinned against than sinning, you are quoting Shakespeare. If you recall your salad days, you are quoting Shakespeare. If you act more in sorrow than in anger, if your wish is father to the thought, if your lost property has vanished into thin air, you are quoting Shakespeare. If you have ever refused to budge an inch, or suffered from green-eyed jealousy, if you have played fast and loose, if you have been tongue-tied or a tower of strength, hoodwinked or in a pickle, if you have knitted your brows, made a virtue of necessity, insisted on fair play, slept not one wink, stood on ceremony, danced attendance on your lord and master, laughed yourself into stitches, had short shrift, cold comfort, or too much of a good thing, if you have seen better days, or lived in a fool's paradise, why, be that as it may, the more fool you, for it is a foregone conclusion that you are, as good luck would have it, quoting Shakespeare. If you think it is early days, and clear out bag and baggage. If you think it is high time, and that is the long and short of it. If you believe that the game is up, and that the truth will out, even if it involves your own flesh and blood. If you lie low till the crack of doom, because you suspect foul play. If you have your teeth set on edge at one fell swoop, without rhyme or reason, then, to give the devil his due, if the truth were known, for surely you have a tongue in your head, you are quoting Shakespeare. Even if you bid me good riddance and send me packing, if you wish I was dead as a doornail, if you think I'm an eyesore, a laughing-stock, the devil incarnate, a stony half-hearted villain, bloody-minded, or a blinking idiot, then by Jove, oh Lord, tut, tut, for goodness sake, what the dickens? But me no buts, it's all one to me, for you are quoting Shakespeare. So you see how many phrases we commonly use were given us by Shakespeare, and that we are still thinking in his thoughts and speaking in his language. And that's why great writers are as alive today as they were in the moment that they were writing.